This is really based on this man, Mark Sfirri. He's a pro turner in Pennsylvania. I hope that sometime in the next year or two we can get Mark to come in and demonstrate for us, because he has a wealth of knowledge in all types of spindle turning, and you can see his work throughout the AAW magazines throughout the past several years. He's quite a special guy. Now, I went to the Atlanta symposium and I saw him demonstrate there. And he makes among many other things, he makes what are known as rejects from the bat factory. These are not quite full size, but you can see he does unusual shapes. The one he demonstrated in Atlanta is this middle one. It's like an offset bat, and that's the one I learned on. But he also showed and gave a few hints. Second from the top shows a ball halfway through the bat, and that's what I was more intrigued with that one than the offset bat, and that's the one I'm going to try to demonstrate today. Okay, this one, the ball is not quite round. This is the first one I've done, but it's not bad. And but the shape, doesn't really look like a baseball bat, right? It looks like more like a cricket mallet or something. I don't know. It's too narrow and then it broadens out too fast. So I wasn't quite happy with this one. This is my next attempt. This one here, I got the bat shape much better, and the ball came out pretty good too. Again, and I use a wood burner to burn the threads on this one. So this is the one I submitted to the Wayne Art Show last fall. The idea then is to turn the ball first and then do the bat. The bat is on the center axis, and the ball is offset. And if this is the center axis, the bat is turned on this, and let's say if the ball is here, you would imagine that the ball, the axis might be parallel to the main axis. But in fact, you don't need to do that because the ball is spherical. It doesn't matter what axis it's on. So I keep this center the same, and I draw and I just change the top axis. So you'll see on the dot on this side, on the tailstock end, I'm going to displace it about 1 inch. Okay, where you're going to put the baseball. Probably too late to find. Mark Sfirri tends to put it way down here. And I think it looks better in the sense that the ball can be offset more from the skinnier part of the bat, so it looks more dramatic. However, this is not where a baseball player would hit a ball. The baseball player hits it up here, so that's where I've tended to place the ball. So instead, again, Mark Sfirri would put it down here somewhere, and it would stick out far because it's the skinnier part of the bat. I put it up here closer to where an actual baseball would be hit. There's ways to make your life easier. The first thing is the less you offset it, the less of a problem it's going to be. So if you wanted to be conservative, you could only move this off 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch. I'm going about probably 1 inch offset, which is larger than most of the ones I've done. Also, just turning a sphere is a useful exercise for any turner, including myself. I remember Mark St. Ledger came to demonstrate for us, and he turned a sphere using 2 axes. He hit it, he turned it on 1 axis, he eyeballed the shape, and he turned it once, and he got it perfect after only 1 rotation of the axis. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's about 6 times less than I would take I would turn it on like 8 or 9 axes before I got it round. Then Mike Hosseluk came, and he turned it on 1 axis, and he got a perfect sphere just by eyeballing it. So I'm going to show you a few tricks where here you're forced to use only 1 axis to turn the sphere. I'm going to show you a few tricks to get it close, if not exact, of the sphere. The first thing I'm going to do, again, is get these corners off and make it relatively round. Down here, I'm going to make it round from here to here, and then this tip I'm going to make round, and the middle part I'm going to leave open for the sphere. Again, I'm going to practice my technique, which again, anchor the tool on the bevel, on the tool rest, and it's high off, it's not really touching the wood, and then you gradually rub the bevel, and then as you lift the handle, you're going to get, finally you're going to get it to cut, okay? And you're going to be cutting on center, it's about right, and I sometimes hold the tool straight, and sometimes I turn it this way, and I use it almost like a skew turned on the side here to get efficient wood removal. We're using safety centers, okay? We were introduced, I had never heard of a safety center until Derek Weedman came to the club and demonstrated multi-axis turning. And then Mike Hosseluk used the same thing. Whenever you're doing multi-axis turning, a safety center seems to be preferred. The experts seem to use this. So this is just a plain cup. There's no teeth or grooves or saw teeth or anything to hold it in place. If you get a catch, it just stops. The wood, it'll spin on this. So on this side is a standard live center that rotates with the wood. On this side is a safety center. It's a dead center, and it's driving the wood even though just by forcing the wood in there with friction. So right now you can see as I hold the wood and I try to turn it, it very slightly turns. So if I get a catch, it'll just keep on spinning. Anchor the tool handle onto my hip. I'm going to try to practice moving my hip instead of moving my hands along the tool rest. I'm going to try to keep the motion on by shifting my hips. Again, I'm coming in with the tool handle down low, and I raise it up till I get cutting. It's a very difficult temptation to move the tool rest while the piece is spinning. Trying to remember not to do that. Okay, it's round there. I'm going to get this part round, and then I'm going to start on the ball, I mean. Okay, this is obviously a very old, dry piece of wood. Looks like we got some insect damage here. I believe that'll be gone before we're done. I want to mention there's a lot of dust coming up into my face. And if I was doing this at home, I'd be wearing a respirator. And someday we got to figure out how to be able to use a respirator mask with a microphone. But I urge you to invest heavily into a good respirator. I have a powered respirator that has a filter and a fan on it, and I strongly recommend you invest that. It's a lot cheaper than a trip to the hospital. And remember, if you don't filter the dust out of the air, your lungs will. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to rotate the tool to about 45 degrees on the flute, and I'm going to rotate it this way, so I'm cutting at this angle. This will produce a smoother cut. But when I want the absolute smoothest cut, I tend to do it this way, straight in and over at 90 degrees. Okay. Baseball is 3 inches in diameter. Okay, the maximum bat legally allowed is 2 5/8. So it's roughly the same. So the way I design these in, because it's not if a full-size bat is 32 inches, this is more like I don't know, 25, 26. So it's going to be scaled down a little bit. So I'm going to want a smaller ball to keep in proportion, and I keep the barrel of the bat slightly less than the diameter of the ball. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is going to make the ball. I'm going to dial in the diameter of the ball, and then I'm going to adjust the shape of the bat freehand to make it look right. Okay. What I'm probably going to do, I'm going to put it right about here, and if I have a little bit extra on the end, I'll just part it off to make the bat shape proper. So I'm going to go right about here as the center of the ball. Now you noticed that I was pushing pretty heavily on that tool, and the safety center worked fine. It didn't slip at all during the regular cutting. But don't be surprised if you see it get caught right now. Okay. So now, as you see here, going to be. Look at that. Okay. All right. So right here, you're overhanging the tool rest by 2 inches or 3 inches, and here you're almost touching. Okay. So that's going to make it a little bit exciting. Now, in terms of, once you get this round, it's really not that tough. The cuts are smooth, they're not interrupted. It's really not that hard. And the rest of the bat is turning on centers. It's not that hard to make it smooth. But the part that's really challenging, especially to me, is these two interfaces, this slant here and this slant here. Those are going to be interrupted cuts almost the entire depth. So those you're going to have to really practice your spindle tools. But again, I try the same thing. I do anchor, bevel, cut, A, B, C. And you can, if you get it right, you won't have to sand this surface. And I pretty much always have to sand. So I'm going to start with the same tool. And after I get a little bit round, I'm going to switch to a spindle gouge. Now, I do not tighten this when I'm running, okay? Because I need to feel that when I have to tighten, okay? So, see what it looks like. So it's round for about half. So tighten it. I'm going to switch to the spindle gouge. This is a Hasseluk spindle gouge. It's 5/8 diameter, which is unusually large for a spindle gouge, but because you're off the tool rest so much, it really does make a difference compared to the standard 3/8 or 1/2 inch. Okay, it's round here. This is set for, I just set this on the baseball before I came here. This is 3 inches. The ball is pretty damn close to 3 inches. I'm going to make it about 2 7/8 at this point to smooth it out. It's doing very rough cuts there. All right. So now the job is going to be to make a sphere, and when you are doing it on a single axis, you have to either have excellent eyes for form, or you have to use calipers or some other template. So the first way I learned how to do it, and I forgot that there's an article in the AAW magazine about doing this. You can get pretty close to a perfect sphere if you mark the diameter at 90 degrees, and you do plus 45 and minus 45. And if you get if you get the diameter the same in those three positions, you're going to be pretty close to a sphere. So that's one way to do it. But there's an even cooler way that Mark Sfirri came up with. And he uses this. Okay, this is a plastic sign from Home Depot. It's I don't know, 32nd of an inch thick, something like that, and it works wonders. And I'll show you how to do that now. I'm going to take this. I'm going to use friction, and it'll machine a perfect half circle on this piece of wood. You can see the start of it here. Let's see. Up here you could smell burnt plastic. See its shape is almost there. There. All right, I'm going to say that's good. And you don't want to have too much overhang because it's going to be banging on the side of the wood. So anyways, I think that is one of the coolest little tips and tricks that I've come across. I'm going to start turning the sphere freehand, then I'm going to use that to check. While you're at it, the one I practiced on earlier the week to see how I did, and this is the first time I used the template. So you can see if you put it on here, just the tiniest amount of daylight at the top. So if I stuck this back on, I would just remove just a little bit off of here. But really, it wasn't that hard to match the template. So you take a look at this. Now you're also aware that in spindle turning you always turn from the highest diameter to the smallest diameter. It's called cutting downhill. Now it's really just turning a large bead. So when the tool is here, the flute is at 90 degrees, and by the time you get down here, it's at almost or starting at 0 ends up at 90. And I'm also raising the handle as I rotate the tool. Okay. So if you see here, I got a lot to move, and you can see how much more of the shoulder I have to remove to get it to a ball shape. So I'm going to remove at least 1/4 inch off each side. The bevel is hitting. As I'm raising the tool handle, I get to cut. Still raising the handle. And it's bumping because it's an interrupted cut. Nothing you could do about that. See, the cut is getting too big here, so I'm coming out and only taking half of it off. All right, I'm going to turn more of the ball now. It's starting to look like a ball, right? Alright, so it's flat on the top. It's touching at the top, and there's air at the this side of about 1/16 of an inch. Air on both sides. There's air down here at 1/16 of an inch. That means you got to remove a little on the top to make it match more. So if you could make a sphere with one axis after you're done with this lead class, I'm going to claim that's going to be a very successful class. Now the other thing Michael Hasselhoff does on his spindle guards, especially this large one, is he relieves the heel. And on this one I've been relieving the heel, but I've not been as consistent in my practice here, and I should have removed more. It's starting to bump there because as I get around, the heel is bouncing on the wheel, on the ball. So that's a bad sharpening job by myself. Same thing. I got to remove a little bit off the top, and this side is longer than that side, so I've got to remove more wood on the tailstock side. And yeah, all right, that's not bad. It's symmetrical. Still a little bit. Oh, it's getting very close. I'm just going to smooth that out. Shear scraping cut, And I'm going to, with my bowl gouge, just to smooth it out a little bit. I can control the shape a little bit better this way. Any tool you like. I left my bigger bowl gouge at home. I shouldn't have done that. That's not bad. See, I have a spiral cut there, a spiral catch right here. That's because when I was concentrating here, I let the tool wander over here, and it was an unsupported cut. So I'm going to get rid of that with some bevel-supported cut. But the sphere, I'm claiming victory on that. Maybe a little bit getting down into the corner there. Now I'll finish that up with sanding. But before I do that, I want to get rid of this, the bulk of this wood. So I'm going back to the center. So here's the center one. So I was 1 inch off center. And you can see the groove and the center point that's embedded in the wood from this pretty sharp, it's a very sharp cone there. Okay. The wood is giving against the steel. So if you lock it, it'll get loose. And you have no way of knowing it's loose because it's locked. So what I do is I leave it loose and I check the tailstock. If I could turn it, that means I've got to turn it. Okay? I'm going to turn this round like a baseball bat. Then I'm going to come over here and do the rest of the handle. Then I'm going to come back. And remember, when you're turning this round, you can't have your fingers or anything else here. It's going to hit. See? It's off center right now. It's probably an inch away from my finger, and then I'm hitting the finger. So you have to be cognizant that this thing is off center. All right. I'm going to go back to the roughing gouge. Now normally when you're using a roughing gouge, you go towards the edge. You never come in from this side. Okay, you're always going this, and so the last thing you cut is the edge. Now I've got two edges. So when I go this, I don't want to go all the way from here all the way across. I'm going to stop about halfway, and I'm going to do this way until I get this edge smooth. Okay, from right here out, it's an interrupted cut. Now I'm going to turn it on its side. The flute is at 90. Okay. Right there's a divot. I'll fill that with coffee grounds. Yeah. Turquoise, maybe. All right, so this is round. It's pretty close. It's a little flat there. I'll get rid of that. And I tell you, this putting the gouge at this orientation, I find very effective at getting a very smooth cut. Now, of course, when this bar is smooth like that, the anchor bevel cut method is much easier to see. So you anchor it on the tool rest, you're rubbing the bevel, and then as you raise the tool handle, you finally get cutting. I probably would sand that at starting at 120. This time I'm going to put the tool rest farther over so that I'm not tempted to go towards the ball there. Could really turn up the speed now. All right, this is round. So now I'm just going to shape the handle. Not too far from a real bat. Okay. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to shape this transition area and reduce the barrel. You see, the barrel now is much wider than the ball, and you have to reduce that to keep it into a natural proportions. So I'm going to remove quite a bit of wood here. So this is the diameter of the ball. Still much fatter here, so I have to remove a good 1/4 of an inch off the radius. You know, when I was practicing, I did not do that a single time. I've done it 4 times already today. That looks like a real bat. Got a little bit of a dip here. I got to remove that. I got to go, yeah. All right. Okay, now by eye, I'm going to try to line up the diameter of this and this. All right, a little bit fat here. I'll take that down just a little bit. Now, if you look at the ratio, the proportions of the bat, in my mind's eye, I've got the end of the bat is going to be right about here. So I'm going to curve that down quite a bit. Okay. Switch to the spindle gouge. Check the proportions of the bat. A little bit fat. Got to cut this down at least 1/8 of an inch. But the length looks good. So I leave this on. I can, for example, that walnut one that is passing around, I'm going to work on that 1 or 2 more times. So I'm going to leave the edges, the centers on both ends to allow me to go back at any time I want. Very frequently I'll do that. I'll take a break, walk away, come back another day and finish the piece. You get a fresh eye and you don't feel like you're rushed. There's no reason to rush to finish these. You just take your time. If it takes longer, that just means you're turning for longer, which is what you want to be doing anyways. All right. I'm going to see what we could do back on the other axis. close as I can get. Now I've got several dings on here, so I'll probably smooth the whole bat. But before I do that, I'm going to work on these two diagonal cuts. Now this, if you were up here inspecting it, you would see there's a little bit of a discontinuity here. I got to touch that up right here, and all the way into the bottom it looks pretty smooth, and there's just a little bit of a lip there. On this side, it's very smooth cut. There's a couple of grooves that would have to be machined out or sanded out, and right at the edge there's some I wouldn't call it tear out. I don't know what I'd call it, but it's a rough grain. See how that looked? Boy, I amazed myself on that one. It doesn't feel natural when you're way out at this tip. You don't realize it, but you're still. If you're gentle and you gradually raise the handle as you come into the cut, it's smooth. It's better in here than it is down near the ball. All right, do the same thing on this side. I'm rubbing the bevel but not cutting, moving out to the edges of the shadow, then I'm lifting the handle, only cutting off about a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to turn it this way, do some scraping. It's bouncing a little bit. It must not have gone back in the center as nicely as I should have. Going to just smooth out the top part of the equator here, and then I'm going to thin down the handle a little bit more and get a smoother cut, and then I'll sand it. You know, all those nicks are almost out. I could sand that smooth, blend it in without much trouble. There's another nick right here, but it looks so round, I don't think I'm going to chance it. Yeah, I got to take a little bit more off the top. I'm going to do that by scraping. All right, that's pretty nice. I've got one band here, the groove or ridge that I should take off, and then I'll stop. Again, I'm going to use a scraping cut on that, just because I don't want to ruin it more than. Alright, that got rid of the ridge and it caused me some chip out on the edge. Alright. I've got enough room. I'm going to stop here, but I've got enough extra diameter that I could take this off at my leisure. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding. That's better. It looks good. And almost forgot to make the handle. That's not bad. I touched that up at home. It's a little bit rough in here. I think that's a little bit of punky wood. Maybe my tool technique also doesn't help. Feel heat coming through to your fingers, means you're pressing too hard. There's no reason to press hard with sanding. That's one of the toughest things to learn about sanding. Now I would probably touch that up with a drill. Might as well do it before I put on some walnut oil. One that says that you have to have the thing, the piece spinning. There's one part here that I didn't like. Now I usually use walnut oil to sand with, sanding lubricant from 220 grit on up. I also bought this Doctor's Woodshop. It's a walnut oil wax mixture. Since I don't use this for anything else, I thought I'd use it up as a sanding lubricant. It does not gum up your sandpaper. If you're gumming up your sandpaper, you add more oil. And you want to turn it from a sludge into a slurry, and then it works fine. If you can give me a couple of paper towels from that rack right there. So you see why you need to keep both centers. Now I'm going back here to sand. These really don't need much sanding, but the ball does. Thank you. can't really sand these without with the lathe moving. There's a little bit of a mark there from one of those catches. Leave that for you guys to see what average tool work is instead of above average. 220 on here. So that was 120 and 220. Then I'm going to stop. And you notice with my sanding pads, I usually let the sandpaper overhang. There's no reason, even if it's square, if it hangs off the edges, it just helps with it. You don't need to, it'll dig in. If you have a perfect match, sometimes it'll dig into the wood. This prevents that. All right. The idea. What I'm going to do at home, I'm going to remove another 1/16 of an inch from the barrel. That'll get rid of this chip out that I introduced, and it'll probably fix the proportions a little bit nicer. And then this is sanded to 220. I'll probably go to 400. Very frequently, I'll leave it in this as walnut oil, as wet sanded. I'll let it sit for several weeks, and then I'll buff it, bio-buffing. Sometimes, at this stage, you can also put wipe-on poly on top, or Danish oil, antique oil, anything else, and only 1 or 2 layers, and it'll toughen it up. The walnut oil is shiny, but it's not necessarily durable. Okay, it'll wear off quicker than a varnish will. Yeah. So, you take, as I understand it, the walnut oil you buy at the grocery store is not appropriate. Doctor's Woodshop and Mahoney, somehow they treat it. Heat treat it, or they chemically filter it somehow that makes it cure to a harder finish. Okay. The walnut oil at the grocery store could go rancid. The other stuff will not. This will harden. This stuff will harden also. What else? Yeah, that's it. And it's considerably better in terms of allergy-free. They will not guarantee it, but most people are not, who are allergic to nuts, are not allergic to this walnut oil. But they won't guarantee that. Yeah. I'll cut it a little bit deeper, but I always cut off with a saw, and then I touch it up. I stick these same sanding pads on my drill. I stick them in my drill press, and I hold the bat, and I'll go around a little bit, and it takes about 2 minutes. This one, the ball is definitely sticking out farther than the other ones. You'll see when you get up here. The other thing you can do with walnut oil is with the paper towel, you could burnish it. You see that there's a lot of dust came out of there, and the heat from this from the friction you're applying will cure the walnut oil faster. Walnut oil does have wax in it, but the one that I usually buy, it comes in a bottle, that's just plain walnut oil. I don't believe it does. I think that the mineral spirits and wipe-on poly cut right through any wax. Okay, come and take a look.